is with the Green Rainbow Party. Their candidate for president last time around, Jill Stein. Thank you so much, and thank you, Susan. Thank you, John. Really great to hear your inspired words. And thank you to everybody who's here, because really the future is in our hands. It's not easy to stop a war machine as it's revving up to pounce, and we all know that it is. But there's one thing that can stop it. That's us, by saying, hell no, keep your hands off Venezuela. And that's why we're here today. It's only us that can do this. And I would add to what John said about standing up and making our voices heard. Before this is over, we're going to need to stand up, we're going to need to sit in, we're going to need to lock down, we're going to need to do what it takes in order to stop this empire from crushing half the world around us and more. You may know that 1%, the richest 1% now, globally, has half of the world's resources, but the lower 70%, not 50, the lower 70% has, how much do you think?
Nothing.
Just about nothing. That's right, it's actually 2.7%. And that's from Bank Swiss. That just came out like a month ago. So it's not getting better, is it? Is anybody out there thinking it's getting better? No, it's not. How about a generation of young people locked into debt? How about half of working people who cannot afford even a $1,000 emergency, let alone to retire? 80% of working people living in paycheck to paycheck, basically. So it's not getting better. It really is up to us. We hear a lot of talk, but we got to make sure that there's walk and not just talk with it. So we've heard a lot from the media. It's pretty much 24/7. Get ready for war. Was anybody around in the run-up to the attack on Iraq in 2003? So we've heard this before, and we know where it leads. It's not just a military-industrial complex, it's now a military-industrial media complex. So, you know, it's incredible that the media has even a shred of credibility left. This should spell the end of that. But to put some information on the table, because we've been hearing an enormous amount of disinformation. So, for one thing, let's just start with the fact. This is not about democracy or freedom. This is about oil. Is there any doubt? No, this is about oil. The the deputy director of the FBI, Andrew McCabe, just came out with a book, and in that book he quotes Trump as actually saying, no, it's Venezuela we should go to war with. They've got all that oil and they're right at our back door. There is no question what this is about, and yet we hear all this hype that this is about human rights and democracy. Yeah, no oil for blood, exactly, and there's a huge amount of blood that could be spilled here. We've seen this before. We know what regime change looks like. We don't need another Iraq in Latin America. We don't need a Syria in Latin America with 500,000 people dead and with 5 million people basically displaced. We know what this looks like in Guatemala, where 200,000 people were slaughtered in a genocide to which, guess who was connected? Elliot Abrams, who's now the point man to bring back all that awful stuff. What went on under Elliot Abrams' watch? Not only genocide, but you had death squads that were trained by the School of the Americas, and that were operating not only in Nicaragua, where they killed like 50,000 people, but also in El Salvador. And you may have heard about this, although your hair may need to be my color, or you may need to not have hair to remember this. But, you know, Under that watch that Elliot Abrams described as a fabulous achievement, we saw the murder of the Archbishop Romero in El Salvador. We saw the murder of the Catholic clergy, of the Jesuit priests and the women, the church women. It was just incredible what we saw going on there. That man has blood on his hands, and yet he has been installed to create another regime change in Venezuela. Let's also be really clear that the standoff that's going on today, have you heard about the standoff today at the border? Where they're trying to make this fake delivery of humanitarian aid, they call it. But we've seen this before, where Elliot Abrams and the U.S. have used humanitarian aid, so-called, in order to be a Trojan horse and bring in weapons. And, you know, this was commonplace under Elliot Abrams' watch. So Venezuela is absolutely right to say no to this public relations scam. You're not hearing this in the media, but the United Nations and the International Red Cross refuse to cooperate with U.S. aid because it's not aid. It is a Trojan horse. And it's really important for us to stand up. What we're doing here today needs to be just the beginning, because it's going to take a lot of this. We need to be educating, we need to be advocating, and we need to be agitating. We need to organize and we need to challenge power. So I encourage you to connect, to sign up on whatever lists are here today or online, and connect with the groups where we are working together on behalf of everyday people, on behalf of democracy. It's not one side or the other that we're taking here. We're standing up for international law. International law says you don't get to choose for other countries, especially when you are the, what should we say, you know, the empire that's dominating the world. We have now 800 bases. We're the only country in the world that has more than a handful. Almost all of the foreign bases are ours. 57% of our budget, of our discretionary budget here in the U.S. is going into this war machine. And what has it brought us? It's brought us austerity, it's brought us joblessness, it's brought us hopelessness, unaffordable housing, student debt. We need to be cutting this dangerous, bloated military budget and creating true security here at home by funding housing and healthcare and jobs and a Green New Deal, which started right here with the Green Party, by the way. But we say go to it. Anybody, take that Green New Deal and run with it. The bottom line is we can fix this, and we can stop regime change right now. Cut the sanctions. That's how to bring true humanitarian aid. Stop the sanctions. That humanitarian aid is worth about 1 day's worth of the harm that the sanctions are doing. So end the sanctions, restore real democracy, let the Venezuelans decide, let the Vatican, let Uruguay, and let Mexico move ahead. They have offered to bring all sides together. And you know who agreed to talk? Maduro. You know who refused to talk? Guaido. Which should tell you everything you need to know about whose interests he is representing. So thank you so much for being here today, and thank you in advance for not giving up on this. We're going to lock on, we're going to sit in, we're going to sit down, and we're going to make sure that we stop regime change in Venezuela and around the world, and we take back our democracy. That's where we need regime change, right here in US of A. Thank you so much.
Thank you.